How's it going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 123 of the Shula Bowl podcast. I am Jay Gibson, and we have a fun episode lined up for you all this week because, well, we get to actually cover real college football games for both the FIU Panthers and the Florida Atlantic Owls. Starting off with FAU as they get ready to take on Maryland, a Big Ten opponent that they're all too familiar with taking on those Big Ten teams. Kevin Fielder and myself went over expectations for that game, as well as some talk about how fall camps wrapped up for the Owls. And moving on over to Miami, we have the FIU Panthers getting ready to welcome Bethune-Cookman to Bit Bowl Stadium. So, of course, myself and Kevin Brawl went over that, as well as how fall camps wrapped up for them as well. So, all things considered, episode 123, super fun, and I can't wait for you all to check it out right about now. This week we're gonna start off with Kevin Fielder and hear his takes for the Florida Atlantic Owls. And welcome back, everybody, to the Shula Bowl podcast here on game week for both FIU and the Florida Atlantic Owls as they are set to take on a Big Ten opponent. Where have I heard that before? In the Maryland Terrapins. So, Kevin Fielder, I'd like to say, hey, I'd like to welcome you back to South Florida. I hope you love the weather. And it's time to talk some Owl talk.
I'm getting PTSD by having to play another Big Ten opponent because the last two have not been very kind on my mental health, given that it was Purdue, which ended on like a failed QB sneak at the end of the game, and that it was the Michigan State game last year where it looked like they were in the game all game, and then they found a way to choke it at the end. So I cannot lie and say I am having very positive vibes heading into this game, but I think that is just the fact that this is just another Big Ten opponent. And I don't want to keep playing Big Ten opponents.
I'd rather not laugh at the situation from my perspective because, well, the Panthers are going to have to head to Happy Valley next week. So, yeah. But let's talk about this Owls team a little bit, generally speaking here, Kevin. Fall camps are just about wrapped up. No depth charts out just yet, but I'm sure, you have a feel for the this Owls roster. Just talk about how you overall think the fall camps went. Looking back now, as a retrospective.
As a retrospective, I think the biggest thing is they come out of this healthy. They come out of this relatively healthy. The only one that isn't healthy is transfer offensive guard Madden Sanker, who unfortunately had to medically retire from football. He was expected to be a reserve offensive guard, so it's not even like it's a major loss in that sense. But I think the biggest thing out of any fall camp is you just have to be able to come out of there feeling like you didn't just have your entire team killed off. And for the most part, FAU will enter the season healthy. And does that immediately lead to wins? Does that translate to success on the field? Who the heck knows? But I think having a fully healthy roster heading into week one, not having to worry about a lot of injuries, that in and of itself is an encouraging sign for FAU because now you get to see what it all looks like. Now you get to see what it all looks like. And there's not this giant looming question mark about, oh, well, how would it have looked if X was healthy? Or how would it have looked if Y didn't get hurt in fall camp? And so to come out of here relatively healthy, right? I'm sure they have nicks, bruises, every team does. But to not have major injuries heading into week one, that's encouraging in and of itself.
Yes, staying healthy, definitely massive right for the start of the football season. So last episode, you mentioned a few names to keep in mind as the fall camps progress. But now that it's over, and again, no starters officially announced, but I feel like anybody in the FAU beat probably has some ideas of who those starters will end up. Who are some of the guys that you think deserved their spots as starters for the Owls?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one is, I think it's not even going to be a starter, but Josh Roberts, a true freshman, appears to have made the 2-deep roster or 2-deep depth chart. He was a name mentioned last week, I believe, by some of the coaches as a player who has impressed throughout camp, who looks ready to take that next step. And historically, FAU hasn't had a ton of true freshmen immediately impact. At the start of the year, last year they had CJ Hurd, the transfer or the true freshman who ended up transferring to Vanderbilt. He looked really good as a true freshman. And so I think to get some true freshman impact here for a team that took in so many transfers top to bottom, that in and of itself is probably a solid sign of where things have gone. Ja'Shawn Platt just got recently named the kick returner, and it's a position where FAU has just like historically not had a ton of explosiveness. They've had a few good plays, but outside of like LeJontay Wester's punt returner, they probably have not had a kick return touchdown since Kareth White against ODU back in probably like 2018. And so it has certainly been a while since they've had a lot of explosiveness in that sense. And so I think the biggest thing is if they can find a way to have explosiveness from that area, from special teams, from the return game, right? I think that just helps this offense in general. And so those are two guys that I have sort of earmarked as like, maybe they can find something. Jason Platt will also be an impactful player on offense as a wide receiver. Again, they're going to go probably 5-6 deep at wide receiver throughout the year. And there are going to be a lot of different combinations, I think, early on, especially against Maryland, where, you may have 3 completely different players at wide receiver at any given time, 4 different players at wide receiver. And so I think Jason Platt impacts there as well. The one I'm really excited to see is Jabari Smith Jr. He's a guy who I've sort of really enjoyed his development from when he first stepped onto campus to now. He looks primed to take that next step. He's one of the only returners into that wide receiver room with any real production, and I think that he's going to have a big year. Again, the biggest question mark is how much do any of these wide receivers play? Is this a thing where you really have 5 or 6 guys playing and it's like, they may only play 50 snaps, 55% of the snaps? Or is it going to be a situation where by the end of that first week, you have a good sense of who the top 3 or 4 is, and those are sort of guys who ride. So it's going to be interesting to see sort of how that develops, but that's sort of still the biggest question mark. I know we had sort of talked about that last week, but I think it's encouraging that we know who's going to be the kick returner, because that's just sort of been an area, I think, for me where I would have wanted a little bit more explosiveness.
Okay.
And then that there are some true freshmen on defense who are going to impact. And I does not feel like Roberts is the only one. It appears there are more who will be on the 2-deep roster. We'll see once the 2-deep is released either tomorrow, Thursday, or Friday before the game, but I think there will be more on defense.
I'm really interested in Josh Roberts specifically being a freshman. It feels like in modern day college football, it's become even harder than ever for freshmen to get immediate playing time, considering the talent you bring in through the transfer portal that want to play immediately. So I'm really interested to see if any freshmen will actually be named starters come week 1.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, and I think that's the biggest difference in terms of just college football nowadays. Is it felt like 4 or 5 years ago, you'd always have a few true freshmen who impacted immediately. And the biggest difference was that there was not the redshirt rule. There was not the 4 games that you could play before, having to redshirt. And so you were either ready or you weren't ready. Yeah. I think nowadays with the 4-game redshirt rule, where guys can play up to 4 games before, using that before losing the redshirt, I think you'll see a lot of true freshmen early on play special teams, play limited defensive snaps. Roberts is definitely going to be one. Another one is Zion Parrott, who appears to have a role. But I think FAU is going to use that redshirt rule to their advantage. And maybe not this week against Maryland, but I look towards that next week where they play Bethune-Cookman or Florida A&M, excuse me. And it's it feels like there's a real possibility you see a lot of true freshmen in that game, especially if it's a blowout late, right? I feel like there are going to be true freshmen who plays. The biggest thing I really want to see is how many true freshmen play week 1. That's an environment that you don't want to throw a lot of true freshmen in. Maryland, week 1, a Big Ten opponent on the road. You don't want to throw, a lot of true freshmen into the fire, but I think there will be a few. Roberts and Zion Parrott, I think, are sort of 2 of the biggest names to watch there.
Yeah, and again, it's very interesting. But first of all, it is interesting that both FIU and FAU are taking on a couple of SWAC opponents. I really would have loved if they were reversed, if we'd be taking on Florida A&M, considering Willie Simmons in his previous time there. That would have been interesting. But yeah, we take on Bethune. But more importantly than that, for the Owls, I'm interested to see or to hear what has been the message from the coaching staff regarding this game against Maryland. Obviously, Zach Kitley's not going to say anything close to the lines of "we have no chance," especially considering the recent, not success, competitiveness against these Big Ten schools. But how is he approaching this week one game? Is it just for sure we're going to shock the world, take down Maryland, or is there more to it than just that?
I think the biggest thing is you have to tell yourself that you can win that game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like if you're coming into that game going, we're screwed, we're not winning, it's going to show up on the field. I've talked to a lot of coaches who play in these big games as smaller school coaches who have to play in this big game against a opponent who is just more talented than you. And truthfully, Maryland, right, like while they've struggled in the Big Ten historically, and it's just not been a great fit for them, they're a more talented team than FAU is. And I think that, like, there's been a discussion amongst FAU fans about where Maryland would finish in the American. They're likely winning the American every year with their current roster. And I think so, like, the biggest thing for FAU is you have to have this maybe just false confidence that you can win the game, right? And like maybe that turns into confidence after the first drive or two. And I think those first two drives are going to be the most telling about where FAU is. If you go out and those first two drives, you lose 14, you're down 14-0, and it's like, oh man, we're screwed. But I think the biggest message that I've sort of seen is that they believe they have a chance to win this game. They genuinely believe they have a chance to win this game. And is that them, like you sort of mentioned, right? Like Zach Kittley's not going to go up to a press conference going, we're screwed, we have no chance, I don't know why we're playing this game. But like, I do think that they legitimately believe that they have a chance of winning this game on Saturday.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how that turns out in those first few drives. But I think that the biggest message is still, right, like, you have a chance, right? Like, as long as the game starts, there's 100 yards between you and the end zone either way.
Yeah.
And so either you win or you lose. And it's like, if you lose, man, you got paid a lot of money to lose. And every one of these programs will take a lot of money to lose. But if you win, that means you also got paid a lot of money to win. So I think for FAU, right, so it's like having this belief that they can win. And they've been in these situations before the last few years against Purdue, against Michigan State, like I'd mentioned, right? So they have a good chance of winning this game. They've certainly been involved in these games. And so the message has been, hey, we can win this game, right? Like maybe it's just a hurrah sort of speech to be like, well, we can win this game. But I think they legitimately believe that they have a chance to win this game on Saturday, to go into College Park, Maryland, and win the game.
And they have a great shot too, like a really great shot. And if they do pull it off against Maryland, it feels like it's all good. It's all going to go down. It's all going to go downhill from here as far as strength of schedule goes. You start with the Big Ten, then you go to your FAMU matchup, of course FIU, and then you get into the American slate. So Maryland is, you mentioned it, not a great Big Ten team. Went 4-8 last season, had a couple of interesting wins here and there, but all things considered, when they actually took on some of the better teams in the Big Ten, like Indiana and Penn State and Oregon, they kind of got tossed around here a little bit. What's your assessment on Maryland? Like, what are some of the things about them that scare you, and some of the things that are like, oh man, this is going to work in our favor?
The biggest thing is there's an uncertainty at quarterback in Maryland. And I think that's the biggest thing working in FAU's favor is they probably at least have not announced a starting quarterback. I believe the last thing I read is there are multiple players fighting for that QB1 spot. I will say, I think that spot's going to go to true freshman Lee Washington. He's a former top recruit who chose the Terrapins over multiple Power 4 programs, multiple Big Ten and sort of bigger programs. And so I think he's going to be named the starter for week 1. I would be shocked if he's not the starter when Maryland goes out on their first offensive possession against FAU. The other thing that is sort of this just insane thing about Maryland is you look at their roster, their wide receiver room has like 5 guys over 6'2". It is like they are building guys in a lab who are 6'4", 6'5", can catch the ball, can sort of go up and leap. That's going to be a major issue for FAU because I don't know if they have the size to compete there. I will say that FAU feels pretty confident that they can stop this. They've had a few taller receivers on roster, Quincy Brown, J.R. Wilson, who are a little bit taller, who can play sort of as the bigger wide receivers that Maryland will have. But I think it's different when the game actually steps out. And, you know, when you have to play a different opponent who has that kind of size, that size is going to be an issue for FAU. Just because there aren't a lot of teams that they're going to play throughout the year who have multiple potential starters who are 6'3", 6'4", incredibly talented players. And so that's going to be the really interesting thing about that week 1 is how do they adjust to that size? And I do wonder if maybe it's little bit less man coverage, a little bit more zone coverage, trying to keep things in front of you so you can attack on the ball as opposed to having to play, sort of hit, bump, and run. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how they sort of strategize around having to play bigger wide receivers like Maryland has.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's definitely going to be up in the air. I'm definitely, like you mentioned it, those first couple of drives where FAU is going to get the ball and get the chance to do whatever they want in their playbook. I really want to see if they can get immediate success there, because if they can and Maryland gets into a hole early, that's where there could be some potential disaster over there at their stadium. My gosh.
Yeah, like I feel like there are 3 real situations that happen on the first 2 drives. And I'll say this throughout the duration of this podcast. I consider the first 15 plays to be the plays where you should execute without any issue. The first 15 or so plays that you script, those are the plays that you've worked on all practice long. You go into that week 1 game. Those are the plays that you feel the most confident in learning a little bit more about the team you're playing. Those first 15 plays, let's say they're 2 drives, right? If FAU's down 14-0, I think that's real panic, because it's like, man, you started this game off down 14-0, you might be screwed. But on the other side, if it's 7-7 or 14-0 in your favor, or even 14-7, you're kind of sitting there going, man, we might have a chance.
Yeah.
We've taken Maryland's best shot off the first 2 drives. We've not stumbled, we've not fumbled around, right? Like we didn't look like a chicken with their head cut off. We didn't look like a nervous dog out there. We looked like we had a chance of winning the game. Maybe you're going into that second half going, man, we've got a real shot.
Yeah.
And I say this again, right? Like they had a real shot against Michigan State, and a lot of FAU fans were saying very similar things to what I'm saying right now. As the second half started, we were sitting there going, wow, they've got a real shot. They've got a real shot of winning this game. And then they didn't win the game. And so I don't even think it's a guarantee that like the first 2 drives tell you if you're going to win the game or not, but you don't want to leave the first 2 drives of this game going, oh man, this is bad. This spells danger. You don't want must-score drives in the first quarter of a game. You don't want to be in a situation where you're down 14-0, feeling like that next drive, you have to score. You have to get points on the board or you're done. So those first 2 drives, I think FAU has to score at least a touchdown on those first 2 drives. Even if they're down 14-7 or they're up 14-7 or whatever, right? Like you can't be down 14-0. You can't be down 10-0. You have to feel about where you are. Have something that you can go back to as the game continues.
So all in all, what are some of the biggest things FAU needs to make sure they do correctly, and what would you say are a few things Maryland needs to avoid to ensure a victory for the Terps?
The biggest thing for Maryland, I think, is you can't get complacent, right? Like this is the biggest game. This is FAU's biggest game on their schedule. This is the game that they feel like they need to win because they haven't beaten a Big Ten opponent in a while. They haven't won a game against a marquee Power 4 opponent since Minnesota. And that was back a while ago. And so, like, truthfully, I think the biggest thing on Maryland's side is, like, they're more talented. They have some question marks, they won't lie. Like, the defense may be a question mark. The fact that we don't know what their quarterback looks like, if it's Malik Washington, that's a question mark. Like, there are question marks for Maryland, but they're more talented. That's just a fact. Any FAU fan who wants to try and argue that, I think you're just losing the argument every time. Maryland has more blue chip prospects. Like, they're a better team. And so I think for them, it's like, man, they just need to play better. They just need to be better than FAU. They need to play their game at their level. For FAU, I think the most important thing is you have to find a way to generate explosive plays on offense. I think you need to find a way through the passing game. I think especially with Caden Veldkamp, with Easton Messer, with Jabari Smith, with Quincy Brown, like you have so many talented players on that offense, the guys who can be explosive players. You have to find ways to generate explosive plays. You can't be expecting every drive to be 10 plays down their throat, right? Like just be perfect. You can't, that's just not a realistic scenario. And so I think for FAU, it's just finding enough explosive plays throughout the game where you can, and I think that goes both ways. It's not just on offense, it's also on defense. You need to create turnovers, you need to create sacks, you need to get them off the field with explosive plays on defense. And so I think on offense, right, it's like you don't need 55-yard touchdowns, but you need 20-plus yard pass plays. You need 10+ yard runs. You need to be able to find explosives. And it was a thing that FAU struggled with against Michigan State last year. They just didn't have enough explosive plays in their tank. I feel like if they have enough explosive plays, they can really win this game. And I know that's like really cliche to just be like, well, the biggest thing is you just have to find a way to be explosive. But like, truthfully, like FAU has a ton of talent on offense. I don't think it's going to be a talent issue for FAU. It's going to be a how does this look issue, because we haven't seen this in a game. We haven't seen this in action. There's the giant question mark of it may look good in practice. How does it look when you're playing a game against another opponent who you've never schemed against, who you've never played against, who you've never practiced against? And so I think that FAU, Caden Velkamp needs to be the best player on the field for FAU, truthfully.
Right.
Like, I think there is no situation where they win this game if Caden Velkamp's not the best player on the field. He needs to be the best player on the field, point blank period, for FAU to win this game. He certainly has the talent to be that. And I think that's going to come through explosive plays, finding ways to generate explosive plays through the passing game.
Well, let's hear that prediction. Let's hear the score as well. Where is this game going to go?
Oh, boy. Put me on the spot.
I can put you on the spot. There we go.
Now the pressure's really on.
Yeah.
I'm going to say this. I feel like I can't come on the Shula Bowl podcast and not predict an FAU win in this game. I feel like I can't. I feel like I can't be here going, well, Maryland's going to win the game. Maryland's certainly a talented football team. This feels like FAU's best chance of beating a Big Ten opponent. I think FAU wins this game. I truthfully believe that FAU wins this game. I think it's going to be a very close game. I don't think this is going to be a blowout either way. Would not shock me if this is a one-score game. Maryland wins or FAU wins. And I think it will end up being a one-score game. Give me FAU beats Maryland on the road, picks up their first marquee win under Zach Hitley, 33-28. So a 5-point win for FAU on the road. Wow. Zach Hitley's first game. I will be on this podcast the next week going crazy. Just truthfully, I will be going crazy if that happens.
Oh man. You can already go ahead and prepare to build that Hitley statue in front of that absolutely crazy name that the stadium has now.
The Flagler Credit Union Stadium.
Flagler Credit Union Stadium at Howard Schnellenberger Field at Boca Raton at the 1.8 miles away from the beach. Okay, Kevin. Well, you seem confident in the Owls, and that's great to hear. And welcome back to the Shula Bowl podcast. It is game week, Kevin Barral, as the FIU Panthers are set to take on the Bethune-Cookman Wildcats at Pitbull Stadium. So we're back in it. We're going to be back in the swing of things. We were at the Willie Simmons coaches show over at Twin Peaks throughout the other day. It's just all the different ways to sort of gas up the football season for FIU.
Yeah, 100%. I'm excited, looking forward to it. And yeah, I think Willie Simmons has an opportunity to kick off his era here at FIU on a very high note.
Mm-hmm. A very high note, too, against an opponent he's all too familiar with. So let's talk, before we get into that, fall camps are now officially in the books. We can retroactively look at how it all wrapped up. What would you say would be some of your biggest takeaways from the fall camps, the biggest names that stood out? Well, what surprised you? What didn't really surprise you?
Yeah, I think a lot of the position battles, like you look at safety, for example, Josiah McGrew. I don't think anyone had that in their bingo card that he would be the starting safety week one against Bethune-Cookman. And you would have thought, you bring in a guy like Websley Etienne, you bring a guy in like Demetrius Hill to return to the program. And you would assume those would have been your two starting safeties. That was my impression, at least. And no, it's going to be Josiah McGrew on one side as the, I believe, free safety, and then the strong safety is going to be Shamir Sterling, who's a sophomore, registered freshman in this case, who really put up some nice. He really gained a lot of weight. He came in at 185 to the program, and now he's at 210. So definitely put on some pounds, which is a good thing in this case. And on top of that, just really overall impressed a lot. The way that he played, what he did during camp was very impressive. And on top of that, I think the offensive line, the way that settled itself actually pretty quickly. It wasn't really until the end where I think it was right tackle that really began to have the biggest position battle between returner Daniel Michelle and Miguel Cedeno, who is a Rice transfer. Both of them are going to play on Friday. But yeah, I think everything kind of played itself out. Obviously, injuries were a big issue, especially with Juju Lewis going down with the tweaking his knee. No, I don't think it was like a full tear of the ACL. Like he didn't tear his ACL. Like he's coming back at some point. So yeah, I think those were the big storylines. Just who's going to step up from that receiving core, and overall, it was a pretty positive camp. I think it kind of played itself out pretty quickly. I think unlike FIU has just a bit more returners, so
Yeah.
It was very helpful that was the case. And week one's 2 days away, so
yeah, at the time of recording. Yeah, no, definitely. The messages from Willie Simmons during the fall camp. It's going to be obviously his first season with FIU, taking on Bethune-Cookman, a team he's very familiar with. He's talked about camaraderie, Kevin. He's talked about making sure that everyone's good to go, on having an energetic coaching staff. He's talked about quite a bit. What do you think are some of the biggest messages, in your opinion, that have really excited you about what Willie Simmons can bring to the table come week one?
Yeah, I think one of the big things that he really emphasized and was just, being the closest team in America. And as cringe as that may sound, or corny, whatever you want to call it, like when you think about the last couple of years with the teams, it really felt like, they weren't really that together. And I think we could both say that, Jake. As you call yourself the neutral host, you do cover FIU. Spoiler alert. So I think it is fair to assume that it wasn't really the closest atmosphere. The culture really took a hit towards the end of last season, and guys noted that. And KJ Owens mentioned it. Ashton Levels mentioned it when I spoke to him. Other guys, my understanding is that they really lost the love for football. So Willie had to make sure not just to implement his 7Fs, and one of those is fun, but another one is family, and then there is just being the closest team in America. And Willie really does think that that's something that they did well, and emphasizing that you need to come out hitting. And, it's the first game of the season. It's against the team you're supposed to beat. Obviously, he's not going to tell you this, but I'm sure to a certain extent he's thinking like we should be able to play a pretty clean game, against a team that, we previewed on our pause-up preview with Offscript, that they're not a good team. It's a really bad team. And no offense to Bethune, but it's just how it is. And that's the team you're supposed to blow out and look good against. And then it gets even tougher with Penn State.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a team that definitely expected to blow out, but I'm sure FIU's track record against FCS opponents as of late. It's usually nail biters, win or lose. So, all things considered, unofficially, the depth chart is not out. Officially, we still have a good idea of what the starters for Bethune-Cookman will be. Who do you think deserved that starting spot the most? Like, who worked harder than anyone else? You mentioned McGrew, I know that, but on offense and defense specifically, who are some of the guys that you feel most confident going to peak immediately come week one?
You got to look at the crop of 3 freshman receivers: Kenny Williams, Art Isaac, Tyson Carter. Those are 3 guys that really came on during fall camp. All 3 of them joined the team during the fall, I'm pretty sure. Tyson Carter, someone who's going to see some time at special teams. Kenny Williams, who probably made the catch of the camp with a one-handed snag in that first scrimmage. And then Amari Isaac, who I've been told has probably the best hands on the team. So I think those 3 guys do their own thing, but are really, really good. And Willie said it in his press conference. He expects to see about 10 to he feels good about 10 to 11 receivers, which you don't usually hear that. And we spoke about this on the positive preview, Jake, that I think this is going to be a situation similar to what we saw back in 2017, 18, 19, where you really didn't have your main guy. You didn't have your 1,000-yard receiver, but you had multiple guys who would go for 300, 400, 500 yards receiving, and you would have multiple targets. And I think that's something that we're going to see a lot of. Kiwan's really going to spread the ball out, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how that pans out.
Mm-hmm. Which position has more depth for FIU, the receivers or the secondary?
I would go with neither. I'd go with running back. I mean, think about it. KJ Owens, Anthony Carey, Devontae Lyons, Sterling Joseph. That's 4 guys who could play right away.
Yeah.
Receivers, you have Alex Perry, and really a lot of question marks after that. Like, who knows? Like, as much as I may have mentioned the freshmen, like, who knows what those guys are going to look like, A position that I will tell you that really did improve their depth and night and day looks so much better is the tight end position. You bring in Dallas Payne, You have Justin Cayenne, the UPenn transfer, Jackson Verdugo, who's expected to play. And I can tell you this right now, he made the depth chart. So he made the 2 deep. So he's going to play. He made it over Cayenne, over Braden Staten. So he's going to play. And they feel good about 4 of their tight ends. They feel good about Payne, Verdugo, Staten, and Cayenne. Those 4 are all going to play. Doesn't matter which 2 are in when I believe it's 12 personnel. So, yeah, I feel really good about those positions. And again, cornerback, you mentioned it. Like, it's a lot of returners. Levels, Victor Evans, Brian Blades, 3 returners right there. I'm probably missing a couple others. But, you bring in Javion Celestine through the portal there too. Receiver, I feel like that just has a lot of question marks, to be honest with you. Like, there's depth, and I'll say that. There is depth. You have Kyle McNeil, who is going to get to see offensive snaps, hasn't seen any. Eric Nelson Jr., who's a guy who's very explosive and I think could be a really good player for FIU. But outside of that, I mean, who knows what Alex Perry is going to look like? Like, we're hyping him up as a receiver 1. He's looked good throughout camp, but he didn't do it. Like, he had some good numbers at Hawaii, but he was never the top receiver over there. So I think there's a lot of ways to look at this. I feel like depth is a lot better than it was a year ago. I feel a lot better about overall depth on the team. That's fair to say. Like, you look at the offensive line, I feel good about our second team O-line and first team O-line. Like, second team still has a lot of ways to go, still has some work to be done, but you can rotate those guys in and out, and I think you'll be fine. So I will still go with running back as the position with most depth, with cornerbacks number 2.
Basically, Kevin, Bethune-Cookman is entering this game looking to once again drive the FIU faithful nuts, having to deal with an FCS team that's going to give them hell. Now, how can Bethune-Cookman do this in your eyes? Like, who are some of the players that you really got to watch out for on the squad that could give FIU some trouble?
Yeah, I think it starts with Timmy McClain, right? Their quarterback. I mean, the new guy, UCF, before a couple years back, was at Arkansas State last year. USF made 11. I don't know if it was 11 starts, but he did make 11 appearances and was there for quite a bit. So a guy who, is a little bit different from what they had in Cameron Ranson, I believe is how you say it. So, less of a, mobile quarterback, more of a pocket passer, but still, regardless, I mean, you have Malik Huggins, who's your wide receiver. I think those are the 2 guys you look at and you're like, damn, like, that could be something that's going to hurt FIU. And Willie noted it in the press conference. Malik Huggins is a very fast wide receiver, had a very good game. The last game of the season against Florida A&M. So I'm looking at those 2 guys really for Bethune. I couldn't tell you much about their defense. I don't think they're a very good defense regardless when you go 2-10. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. I think FIU should be more than fine. This is a really bad FCS. This is a really bad team, Jake. There's another way to slice it. Like, at least Monmouth was a pretty explosive offense.
Yes, they were.
And Maine was like decent on defense. So you had your troubles there. I think with Bethune you have 0 troubles, except maybe the quarterback and wide receiver.
Bethune took on 2 FBS teams last season, USF and Western Michigan. USF hung 48, and somehow Western Michigan hung up 59, which is absolutely insane. Nothing against Western Michigan, but it's still a crazy box score to look at. I think the worst loss contributed to Bethune-Cookman last season, however, was the loss to Clark Atlanta University, which is a D2 squad. So basically, it's going to boil down to this, Kevin. What does FIU need to avoid more than anything to make sure that they don't get upset here by the Wildcats?
Yeah, the explosive plays by Bethune. I think, and I was listening to the off-script interview, like, they may still pound the ball, but at the end of the day, you got to rely on your best players, and that's your wide receiver and your quarterback. So I would say avoid the explosive plays. We still aren't entirely sure if FIU could stop the run or not. I don't think this game will be a good indicator of that.
It won't.
I think you got to look at the Penn State game as a real indicator of can FIU somewhat stop the run when you're going to face 2 1,000-yard rushers next week, and then Drew Allard, who's a great quarterback. So I would say just avoid the explosive plays. Don't let them get into the red zone too often. I think FIU should be fine.
So let's say let's put up a hypothetical here. If FIU gets up super early, plenty of time to go in the game, what should they do? Do you want to see them just keep going and going and going with their star guys, or do you want them to immediately send in some of the newer names? Like, for example, Joe Pazanski is going to get some snaps in the second half. Let Keewan Jenkins rest. Do you want to see them do something like that, or do you just want to continuously assess what that starting roster could look like?
That's something I'm really curious about because every indication makes you feel like, hey, like Willie's gonna run up the scoreboard. Like everything he said, like he wants to be a high scoring offense. You had the chance to do it. You may as well do it. But honestly, when you're going to Penn State the week after, I think you play it a little conservative after you take maybe a 20 or 30-point lead.
Yeah.
And Joe Pazanski, like he started 11. He started every game for Holy Cross last week. He was their captain. Like he's a solid backup. Like probably one of the best backups FIU has had in a very long time. So by no means am I saying you're going to play conservative with a Joe Pazanski, but it also gives you an opportunity to check out the freshmen, see what you got in your O-line. Like yes. And if you're saying should they sit out the starters, I would say so. I think it would be the best move.
Well, what would be the one thing that Bethune-Cookman could do, even in a loss, that would actually make you disappointed on FIU side?
They keep it close, like they keep it close up until the end. Like you got to like sweat it out, like the Monmouth game. I think that would be that would honestly be it. Like, and honestly, like if Bethune drops like 30 points, that would be even worse. That would be just as bad.
Even if FIU scores like 60, if you let Bethune drop 30, that's not a good indicator.
You shouldn't be letting Bethune drop 20 to begin with. But yes, it wouldn't be a disappointment. Obviously, you win, you'll take it. But it would certainly be like, all right, maybe there are some issues, and it'd be like kind of like a setup to a Penn State loss by like with them dropping more than that. So yeah.
Ultimately, the game that'll provide us with the best test of where this FIU team is at is going to be in 2 weeks, right? Against FAU.
From this
it's not gonna,
the name of the podcast.
Yeah, the Shula Bowl. Like not even the Delaware game after. FAU is probably going to be an even better test than the Blue Hens, I would argue.
Yeah, I mean, two very similar programs. And then obviously with Delaware, you're going to the conference play, so you should know more or less what your team looks like by that point. And yeah, but I do think this Shula Bowl is going to be a really good test, not just for FIU, but for FAU as well. I mean, that's a team that has to play FAMU, Maryland, who they actually have a pretty good shot against.
They do
considered. And then they have another game in there. I think UConn at some point. So yeah, it's going to be a tough one. Tough test for FIU, tough test for FAU. So that's going to be the marker of where your team's at.
Yeah, Kevin spoke.
Both games, it can mean a bowl game or not. Like for FIU, this is like the biggest game for them in terms of like, are you going to end up making a bowl game? Can you scrap out a couple more wins after that? Because you're assuming 2-2 in the non-con. You would have to get 4 wins out of conference play, which would be Delaware, Missouri State, Kennesaw, maybe Sam Houston.
Perhaps.
And maybe claw one more after that. So, the FAU game is crucial unless you beat UConn and lose to FAU, which would be fine too. Not fine, but it would be still a bowl game.
Speaking of FAU, Kevin Fielder already brought up his excitement about their game against Maryland this week and even gave us a pretty flattering score prediction on who he thinks is going to win. And I'm going to turn the table to you to do the same here, Kevin. Who is going to win this game between FIU and Bethune? And I think I already know the answer to this, but what's your score prediction?
FIU will blow out the Bethune-Cookman Wildcats 48-12.
No drama.
No drama.
No injuries either. Definitely don't want to see any.
Perfect game. Perfect game. Yeah. Willie gets his Gatorade bath, Powerade bath, and both schools are now Powerade too. So yes, right. Willie gets his Powerade bath, and that'll be it.
Well, you heard it here first. Both Kevin Barral and Kevin Fielder confident that FIU and FAU will get the jobs done against 2 radically different opponents in Bethune-Cookman and Maryland. But thank you all so much for watching episode 123. We're getting closer and closer to the Shula Bowl week, which we have some awesome stuff cooking for that. But until next time, we will see you all as we get ready for FIU to take on Penn State. FAMU for FAU. We will see you all then. Bye-bye.